We most definitely have some spring or, depending on where you are, summer weather out there. Even though the calendar is flipped to April, it's still March Madness. But here at the Voice of College Football, it's always college football season. Appreciate you stopping by. When it's either Monday or Tuesday, even if it's Wednesday, and definitely when it's Thursday, and also Friday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, on those 5 days, would love to see you here for the best in discussion, debate, and analysis. Thanks for dropping by. Leave those comments and questions there in the chat, or those questions and comments in the chat. Either way, we will take those. We've left the call-in line available as well. Got a number of things to get to, including we've got Ryan Herrings stopping by to talk Wisconsin football at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. That's in 1 hour. I know some of you may say, Mark, you're 5 minutes late. No, more like 8 minutes late. Okay, sorry about that. I apologize. I definitely respect your time. So I apologize for being just a bit late, a little tardy today. But 5 p.m. Eastern Time, Ryan Herrings from Locked On Badgers. And then at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, more from Locked On with Spencer Mclaughlin to talk Oregon football from Locked On Ducks. In the meantime, we will talk to you about college football, and there's a few things to line up that I see coming in here just in the last couple hours. Before that, we want to remind everyone that the Amazon link is in the description section of all the videos. When you shop on Amazon, please use the link that we provide. Same shopping experience, they tell me. Actually, I've experienced it myself. I have sat next to friends and family members, and they've gone through the Amazon link, and it's instantaneous. It recognizes your account, so please use the link that we provide. We also recorded some Arkansas football talk this afternoon that will be available to you first thing in the morning with Ty Hudson, our buddy Ty from Tusk Talk with Ty. Got to get the alliteration on Tusk Talk with Ty. And sponsors, we're looking for sponsors, but most notably, we want to help you. We want to partner with you. And we have always heard from our sponsors here at the Voice of College Football, whether that be State Farm. They've been a recent sponsor, Win Agency over in the Michigan channel right now, that they say, hey, you guys do it up right. Therefore, we can help your personal brand, your product, your service. Partner with us. Hit us up at sponsorships@vocfb.com. All right. In the chat, Tukey G showed up at 341. Somebody out there, somebody give Tukey G a run for his money soon. Always the first one in the chat, Tukey G, but 19 minutes early, I guess it's going to be difficult for anyone to give you run for the money, but we'll give it a shot. Jackson right there as well. Appreciate you, Jackson. Timothy, ready for some football. Tukey G coming back. Partially prepared for football. And Timothy is always ready. Moose is here checking in on the festivities. Snowing in Colorado. Colorado weather is quite unusual. So I lived in Connecticut for 20 years, where basically the seasons fall right in line with about where they're supposed to be. And once you go into a deep freeze in winter, you're in a deep freeze in winter, usually. But when it becomes spring, sure, you get those teases. You get those teases all throughout the north. You get a tease in February, you get a couple teases in March, and then it dips back into winter and back and forth. So you're going to get that. What I experienced in Colorado, spending some time out there, probably been to Colorado 20 times. Never lived there, but been there many times. Very odd that what I liked was, and many people don't like this, when the thermostat goes up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down. 61 day, 22 the next day, 24 the next day, 70 the next day, back down to 28. That doesn't bother me. I actually enjoy the breaks in the winter weather, and that's what you get in Colorado. And of course, it's almost always sunny, beautiful blue skies. But you do get that odd transition from winter into spring where it goes back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. But you get so many more breaks in the winter, from what I remember, than you do when I lived in Ohio or in Connecticut. But it could snow in May, or it could snow in October. But what a beautiful state. Jim, marked safe from last night's tornadoes. Is that in Indianapolis, Indiana? So, okay, good to know that. I will say that for anybody out there that experienced some horrific weather last night, we hope you are safe. I was unaware of that. I don't know too many people that love winter moose, blue Wolverine. Mark, have you watched any USFL games? Many former college players still working hard in that league. I have not. I look back on being a young guy, teenager, and I don't know how I had so much time on my hands. Like, it didn't seem like there was anything in the world of sports that got by me. Like, I watched everything. All the football, all the baseball, all the basketball. Never watched hockey. But I would even watch golf tournaments, tennis tournaments. Had plenty of time to go out with my friends. Worked a job, went to school. When I was in college, was I ever missing baseball tonight? No, I would never miss baseball tonight. I would always keep up with all the scores and the box scores every day. Watch all the highlights, watch all the games. Not every game, of course, that's impossible, but would watch nights and nights after night after night after night of baseball games. Watch the USFL when it was a thing in the 80s. Would even watch that in the middle of baseball season, which was my love. And there were stretches in college where I'm going to college, plenty of time to go out with my friends, worked a job, internship at the same time, all this stuff going on. I don't know how, when we're younger, we can, and now it's like, I run a business and I can't find enough time to do anything else. It's a bit exaggerated. I have made sure that I have found time to do other things recently, but no, I have not watched. That's my long answer in saying that I have not watched any USFL games. The Red Rocks in Colorado. Yes, I've been there several times, many times. Oh, yes, Moose following in with the promotion there on Amazon. Sunny, where 79 Jed Buck is, Code Blue coming out of Mike Anderson's laptop or phone. And of course, here's the book. I believe you'll love it. I can't guarantee it. Of course, I can't guarantee it, but I'm almost positive you will love the book. Disputed National Champions. The link's in the description section. Moose, thank you so much for posting that. Again, we've got a jam-packed show with your calls and with two guests coming up. Ryan Herrings from Locked On Badgers and Spencer Mclaughlin, Locked On Ducks. New to the show, just here in the last few days, and I hope you were able to catch this Pit Snipe Husker. Pit Snipe Husker. I don't know where that comes from, but I'm sure there's a story behind that. One day I'm going to replace this laptop and we'll be fine with the monitor not going out every 13 seconds. Pit Pit Snipe Husker. Pit Snipe Husker. Yes, that I actually jumped back on the stream after I shut down the stream, or after I got off, and I jumped back on just to say, hey, it's nice to see you there. I'm good. I have been good all day. It's been a fine day. Yes, it has been a fine day, and Karen loves the crazy weather in Colorado. And again, it does not bother me. Although, yeah, I like my weather better. But still, I would not mind living in Colorado. I would do that. Yakov. Always good to see Yakov. Yakov, you will disappoint me if you don't come up with a brilliant question for me. I know I might be putting you on the spot, but you were the best to look back to yesteryear and put me on the spot. You always do that. It was a somewhat difficult decision when I was deciding between, am I going to move to Florida? Am I going to stay here in Northeast Ohio? And you might be chuckling right now. I get that. Some of you might be chuckling, but it was, I thought about it. Pit Snipe Husker, it's not necessarily anything scintillating that you need to go back and watch, but I'm just saying that I shut this down yesterday, and then I saw your comments, and it was very nice, and so I popped back in to say hi. Oh, here we go. Here we get the explanation. I always like the story behind we ran a bit of a poll a couple of years ago because I wanted to get a bead on our fan base here at the Voice of College Football, our community. That's what you are. Our community here at the Voice of College Football, and who you root for. Because I wanted to know how many percentage are this fan base versus that fan base. And we had a pretty good turnout of people responding. But I also asked people if they wanted to, that they would contact me at MarkRogersTV at Gmail. So if you've done this in the past, don't do it again. But if you have not, because I'm keeping a running tab, even though I have not worked on this in a long time, of how many Ohio State fans, Michigan State, Nebraska, on down the line, every team in the country. Apparently, how many people do we have in our community that represent those fan bases? Which means that Karen should probably respond because she has not officially, and there might be some other newer people here that have not, because it's been a couple of years since I've done this. Again, just to get a feel for what's the distribution of the fan bases watching. But I also said, hit me up at MarkRogersTV at Gmail. Tell me who you root for and tell me why. What happened in your life? What made you I don't know, let me think. What made you I don't know, maybe there's an inside joke coming. Nebraska fan. What made you a Nebraska fan? Maybe you've got a story to tell. And it was fun because a lot of people, I don't mean like 14 people. I mean hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people. I think more than that, actually. When we tally up all the numbers, got back to me. Hey, Mark, I'm a Boise State fan. This is why. And then I also asked, how long have you been watching? So if you would like to take part, and again, if you've done this before, don't do it again. Not because I don't want to hear from you, but because I'm going to go to my little list and be like, all right, you're already on my list. Penn State fan Jim, I already got you here. Okay. Already heard your story. But if you would like to tell me who you root for, how long you've been watching here, not your team. I want to know how long you've been watching the Voice of College Football. And then also how you became a such and such fan. Then hit me up at MarkRogersTV at Gmail. All right. Got a deal? All right. Because I did enjoy seeing those various stories. And so Pit Snipe, a Husker, is explaining this somewhere. Now I lost track of it. It is right. Oh my goodness. There it is. Okay, Snipe, Navy engineer. The pit is the engine room. Pit works. Okay. Pit Sniper Husker. Oh, I'm sorry. Pit Snipe Husker. I think I keep saying sniper. Pit Snipe Husker. Got it there. 79 Jed Black. I believe that you are a bit new to the process here at the Voice of College Football as well. Yakov is attending an event called A Night with Bernie Kosar in early May. So I assume that's a little get together with, of course, the former Dallas Cowboys quarterback. Sorry, just kidding. Cleveland Browns quarterback. He did play an NFC championship game for the Dallas Cowboys and leading them to the Super Bowl. But yeah, Bernie Kosar, maybe the most popular Cleveland Browns player of my lifetime. Minnie, are you kidding? Florida or Ohio? No question, you made the right choice. I believe I made the right choice, but yeah, I wasn't kidding. Bernie likes to throw him back. I am not going to comment on Bernie, but I will say that the last few times I've seen Bernie Kosar, where he's been on camera and speaking, it's been a little rough. Iowa fan here. Huh? Blue Wolverine. Iowa fan here. Name checks out. I also like to know when people start their fandom, Minnie. Jim says, great community here, Mark. I agree, Jim. Now, if we could put a couple zeros after the community number, couple zeros. Speaking of which, I don't know how we're going to do this exactly, because on one hand, I would like to pull together all of the YouTube members and the Patreon members and have a kind of behind the paywall live screen to talk to all of you. But at the same time, I guess I would like to have everybody involved, and we would like to talk about what you would like as a YouTube channel member, Patreon, YouTube, whatever your choice is. It's the same thing. You get the same thing. And so we're going to do that sometime in the next few weeks. So expect that notification to come out that Mark's going live, and let's talk about Patreon and YouTube and what you want to see. I actually get more entertained by the chat, and I don't really want to go to the college football news. Yeah. Pit Snipe Husker knows what I'm talking about with Bernie Kosar. Minnie is not a big fan of Kurt Signetti. Is that just because he's a big mouth? I think that's part of the gig. That's part of the show. I think he had to do that because they needed something at Indiana. They needed some swag at that place. They needed somebody to go in there and say, we're tired of getting our teeth kicked in. It's stopping right now. We are not that Indiana anymore. Unless we play a really good team. Then we are that Indiana still. But when we play the other crappy teams in the Big Ten, we're... All right, to the news of the day. think there's a few things out there. Again, everyone, note the top of the screen here on the screen share. Timothy loves Curt Cignetti's attitude. I find it rather, I don't want my coach to act like that. I would not want to, I don't believe that he would be one of those guys that I believe I would be entertained by for about 5 to 10 minutes. I run across these people in life where in no way do I want to hang out with them. But for their shtick lasts for about 5 minutes, and it's funny for about 5 minutes. So if you're at some kind of gathering party and you're just kind of going from group to group to group, yeah, you can listen to this knucklehead for 5 minutes and laugh, and it's kind of funny. But then it kind of drags on and on and on and on, and you're yeah, enough of that. I don't need to hear this all night. I have a feeling that Curt Cignetti would kind of put me in that place. Would not necessarily want to hang out with a guy for the entire night. I might be wrong. I might be judging. But that's just kind of how he hits me. But notice the top of the page there. What I'm looking for is a Coastal Carolina shirt. So we're going to, after the show here, if I remember that long from now, which that's questionable, I will be opting for that one to the far left there. I want a nice bold teal Coastal Carolina. I would prefer to have black, maybe some black block lettering outlined by white would be the best. Because that is my football team of 2025. Something would have to drastically happen in the next few months to get me off of the Coastal Carolina Chanticleers bandwagon. Free concessions. That's all I needed to hear. Free concessions, and this is my team. This is the team I'm rooting for in 2025. Coastal Carolina. Does that mean I'm going to watch all their games? No, let's not push it. I will probably not be watching the games, but out of the games I don't watch, I will definitely check out their box score first. I'll do that. And maybe if they're on a Thursday night, I'll be more apt to watch Coastal Carolina this year than at any other time. I doubt that I've ever watched a Coastal Carolina game outside of a bowl game. If it's a bowl game, but I am respecting this university. Maybe there's some kind of explanation for it financially that they kind of get themselves off the hook. But man, I just think that this is a phenomenal statement for the free concessions for the entire college football season at home. So they've got to be playing 7 games at home. Free concessions. You get your hot dog, your nachos, your popcorn, your fountain drink for free. And if I read the article correctly, unlimited numbers of trips to the concession, which I really don't believe that part of it. I may have read that wrong, but that's my team. Yes, Timothy, of course, Indiana did defeat Michigan this year. Gregory, I don't know anything about a Michigan State investigation. I know that there was some talk about Mel Tucker that I caught last night. Boy, that guy's a scoundrel, isn't he? Maybe we'll look that up. But again, the teal Coastal Carolina t-shirt is what I'm hoping for. Edward likes that we've got the Gators. We don't really have a theme going today. We just, whatever we've got back there is what we've got. The last show I did was Miami, so they're right there. We've got a blue blood theme going for the most part back here. Michigan fans, unfortunately, your helmet is still somewhat down the hall here. I will retrieve it at some point. All right. While I'm shopping for Coastal Carolina gear, let's get to this top story that just came down. We usually don't delve into the recruiting too much here, but Ohio State has landed the number 34 player in the country, according to the ESPN rankings, Simeon Caldwell. Ohio State landed the commitment of four-star defender Simeon Caldwell on Wednesday, the 34th overall prospect. 6'2", 195, Jacksonville, Florida, just up the road from me. Number 4 outside linebacker, picked Ohio State over Miami, Notre Dame, and USC following an unofficial visit with the Buckeyes this past weekend. Caldwell's decision marks Ohio State's second top 35 commitment in the week after the program earned a pledge from four-star safety Blaine Bradford. So I am pretty confident in saying that you can go to our Ohio State channel and you can check out a commitment video from our guys over there reporting on the Buckeyes. For one, Simeon Caldwell. Looks like there's a connection here. Caldwell is the son of 10-year NFL veteran and former Jacksonville Jaguars defensive coordinator Mike Caldwell, who was also the former head coach of the, no, wait a minute, that's Jim Caldwell. Never mind. And a nephew of Buckeye secondary coach Tim Walton. So big pickup for the Buckeyes. Scheduled for a slate of late spring trips to Miami, USC, and Notre Dame, although the flips are possible. I would love for somebody to run some numbers on flips. How many of these players flip? I would love to know, especially out of the top 300 to 400 in the country. I don't think the rest of those guys flip because they're not that as well sought after to have the confidence to go and flip to another school. They just want a scholarship. But out of the top players in the country. So it's been another great recruiting class for Ohio State thus far. Caldwell and Bradford, two of ESPN's top 10 defenders in the cycle. The Buckeyes now have the backbone into a growing defensive class in 2026 with four-star cornerback Jacob Weatherspoon. Represents the third top 300 defender already committed to Ohio State. Five-star cornerback Albert Hill out of Akron is ESPN's number 13 overall prospect in the 26 class and represents another top target who could further bolster the Buckeye secondary class between now and early signing period in December. Also, we reported on Wednesday on our Buckeyes live show that Chris Henry Jr., the five-star wide receiver, arguably the best prospect in the country, has confirmed his commitment to Ohio State and that he is not looking around. And they've got those other pledges from the top players in the state. Give me a call and we'll talk college football. We got Ryan Herrings slated to stop by. And Ryan is with Locked On Wisconsin, and you can catch Ryan here at 5 p.m. Eastern Time, and then Spencer Mclaughlin from Locked On Ducks. Oh, yeah. Got our guy Garrison stopping by to talk Buckeyes. Garrison, what's going on?
Mark, I'm doing well. How about yourself?
What is up? I'm just catching up with your audio here. My apologies. I had you tuned down. But how's it going today, Garrison?
It's going well. Mark, being me sometimes is really fun because I get to be a happy Buckeye in the state of Michigan. And, on a day like this, actually, it's not even today. I mean, look at the last few weeks or just last 4 or 5 days now. Ohio State and the commits they've signed gotten 2 of the top 10 safeties in the class over the last 5 days, which is just amazing. Great job on Matt Guerrieri. But no, it's going well. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. and I am searching for the banners because Garrison's got so many shows going at this point. Buckeye fans, you got to be locked on. Forget just Buckeye fans, college football fans. Of course, whether you love them, which you would be a Buckeyes fan, I guess, or hate them, which seems to be about 90% of the country, you got to check out Garrison. You got Ryan. You got the Monday and Thursday shows, the call-in shows. You got the Tuesday show, correct? You got the Buckeye Brigade when?
Every other week. So it'll be this upcoming Tuesday at 7:00. It'll be it's just so for everyone knows, it's myself, Mike, who's also on the network here at the Voice of College Football, Chris Drew, of course, from Minnesota Sports, Juck from Juck on Bucks, B Moses from Scoop, and then also I didn't forget anybody, did I? No, Ron from Best Damn Media. Yeah, that's everybody. It's fun.
That's a phenomenal crew right there.
Yeah,
that's a lot of knowledge. That's a lot of trash talking in one live stream right there.
Oh yeah, so it's always fun, especially because me and Chris like to go at each other a lot and just throw jabs. So it's always fun.
You and Chris do?
Oh yeah, Mark. One of my introductions, like once I had, I started Scarlet and Blue Show with my buddy Bryce, and before I took my page and made it completely about Ohio State, I would dip into some of the spaces. And originally, Chris and I could not get along because of Kyle McCord and Devin Brown.
Okay, who was? You got to be honest here because we know how this played out now. Who was on whose side?
I was on the Kyle McCord side, but what got annoying for everyone was that I was a drum beater. Like I mean, to the point where I thought he could be as good as the other quarterbacks that Ryan Day has had.
Well, certainly didn't have a bad season with the Buckeyes,
no,
and he lit it up for Syracuse last year. So the guy's got talent. There's no doubt about that. I think he was just maybe a little bit too hesitant. Didn't see some guys downfield. His reads were a bit off, but he can sling it about as well as just about anyone.
Yeah. The talent's there. The talent is there with Kyle McCord. I do believe that.
So Garrison, talking about quarterbacks for the Buckeyes, of course, we got in a situation that was fairly similar with C.J. Stroud, who had never thrown a pass in college, and starting quarterback this year is most likely going to be the same situation. If Julian Sayin comes through and secures the job as most would expect, how do you see this thing playing out?
I do expect struggles on both sides of the football going into the season. Now, does that mean I think we're going to lose to Texas or anything? No, I think a lot of teams like that who have a lot of new faces are going to go through that. But for Ohio State, we were talking about not just new faces, but new coaches and a new scheme, new playbooks. You got coaches have to get used to each other, being around each other, and going through the headset for Brian Hartline. There's a lot to go. There's a lot there, but I think for Julian Sayin, this is where it helps. There is not one position I think he's going to lack at. And I think that there could be a chance this season that the quarterback might be the least talented, not least talented, but he's probably not one of the lesser best talent, better players on the team, on the offense. But Jeremiah Smith on the outside, and also Carnell Tate, who finally gets to be a wide receiver too and show what he has and what he can do. Then you're talking about Max Clare at tight end. You're talking about Brandon Ennis, Mylan Graham at wide receiver. I believe this offensive line is going to be one of Ryan Day's better ones. You're returning the interior offensive line from the playoffs. Luke Montgomery, Tegra, Carson Hinsman. Mind you, Carson Hinsman, I think a lot of people forgot this when Mclaughlin got hurt. Hinsman started the whole season prior to that at center. Every single game, every single snap, or meaningful snap. So you have that. Then on the outside, you're bringing in Phillip. You're bringing in Onianwa from Rice. We are hearing great things. About Saravel, someone who after I saw him play last season, I said if I don't see him get in a scarlet and gray uniform, I'm not going to weep. He won. He got Iron Buckeye. That means a lot in the Woody. That means you're putting in the work. That means. Because people forget sometimes before spring practice, the players aren't around the coach. I remember being even at the NAIA level at St. Francis, we weren't around our coaches between that time after the season, between that and the spring. So you're there with your with Marietta, your strength coach, strength and conditioning, and you're there with your teammates. Getting an Iron Buckeye means that you're being noticed by those guys, the guys that really matter, the guys that you go to war with. So I think that's really important. And Julian Sand is surrounded by all that. Not to mention that the running back stable, it's going to be fine with Donaldson and people. So I think Julian Sand it's going to be a struggle for him, but because there's everything around him, I don't think it's going to be that long of a struggle.
So you say that the running back position is going to be fine. I think it's going to be fine, but I think that between James Peoples and C.J. Donaldson, boy, they got a tough act to follow with Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins. I don't think there's going to be any question that there's going to be a slight decline at the running back position.
I'm in agreement with you. Quinshon Judkins, prior to coming to Ohio State, was seen as not just one of the best running backs in college football, one of the most durable. You look at his stats in the first 2 seasons while he was in the SEC, like it's up there in terms of history. Travion Henderson, of course, we knew was one of the more talented running backs to ever come through Ohio State. Now injuries, he's suffered kind of hampered him. But this past season, we saw what he can do and what he can be. Donaldson, coming over from West Virginia. Now it's a different animal being at Ohio State. Bigger guy, he has slimmed down, but I don't think he's not as talented as the 2 prior. Now James Peoples, I do believe, can be what a Judkins or a Travion Henderson is. A lot of guys have likened him to J.K. Dobbins. I personally liken him to Maurice Clarett because I like the way he runs with his pads really low, knees really high, compact guy, hard to bring him down, big arms. But there's that. One thing that caught my eye or caught my ear, Mark, and I don't know if you heard this, but it was one of those fun videos the team does when what other position you will play. And I thought, I saw C.J. Donaldson. I thought he would say linebacker because that is what he came in as at West Virginia. He said wide receiver, and he asked somebody, and there's 2 guys there right next to him, Brandon Ennis and Jeremiah Smith, who both affirm and confirm, at wide receiver he was that guy. And then I got to thinking, and this kind of tells back to the Julian Sand conversation. Now I don't believe that he's gonna be as good a runner as the 2 guys were last year. But if he was that good at wide receiver, though, like what else can you do with Donaldson? But after that, we're talking about a lot of young guys. When you're talking young running back rooms, you're talking blocking problems. That's the only thing I'm worried about there.
Got Garrison on the line talking Buckeyes, and you can catch Garrison on the Ohio State channel. Again, it's typically Mondays and Thursday nights with the primetime live Buckeyes show. I got to tell you, I got to stop here for a second, Garrison, because I get him confused. So Monday and Thursdays are the Buckeyes live show, right? Primetime live.
Yeah. Monday primetime live, Thursday call-in show, and then on Wednesdays. On Wednesdays you can catch Mike and Terry on the world famous Buckeye show, and every other Tuesday, just as a reminder, this Tuesday, you can find the Buckeye Brigade at 7.
Do this, people. Show up Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Just show up Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. If you subscribe to the channel right here, which if you're watching, obviously you are watching, then I post the schedule channel every day. If you follow us on Twitter /X, we post the schedule every day. But man, just lock it in for Monday primetime, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And then if you need more Buckeyes talk, of course, we get together with Steve Hellwagon and Tony Girdman on Wednesdays. So with Jeremiah Smith fully entrenched as a superstar, Carnell Tate had a strong season last year. They slot up to 1-2 with the Mecca Buka moving on. Do you think Brandon Ennis is the obvious 3, or do you think Mylan Graham, Bryson Rogers, other guys possibly factor in?
I do believe Brandon Ennis will be the number 3 guy. Over the last, I would say this spring, and especially last year from spring on, Ryan Day talked about Brandon Ennis a lot. Said that when he's on the field, that you feel him. I thought Brandon Ennis did a great job spelling this past season during the championship run, of coming in when he could and making plays. He's a very good blocker. I believe he's one of the most versatile players on the team in general. One of the better athletes. A lot of people because of Jeremiah coming out of South Florida, a lot of people forget that Brandon Ennis, he is seen as one of the best wide receivers that ever come out of South Florida to play high school football there. And in his senior season, they had a quarterback injury, so he ended up playing quarterback and did very well there. And then I also, when he came out, I looked at his body and I said, he could probably play running back. So be it that Ryan Day mentions him possibly playing running back this season because he wants guys to have primary and secondary positions. So I think Brandon is going to be someone you have to get the ball to, or at least someone you want to get the ball to, because he can do a lot of things with the ball. When it comes to Mylon Graham, now I have a hot take that guys, no one on the Buckeye Brigade is with me on this, but I do have there's a lot of people that agree with me on here. I think there's a chance that Mylon Graham might be, and not stat wise, but by the end of the season, I think there's a chance that he might be seen as the second best wide receiver on this football team. When he was coming out of high school, and I have one of my best friends, he played wide receiver in college, D3 level, but he knows the position very well. And I remember back when Chris Olave was a 3-star, he said, no, that's the guy in the class. And I was like, oh, okay. But I'm very high on Brandon Ennis. He is also. The routes that he runs are at an NFL level, and that was in high school. Now, of course, you gotta get a college body. You gotta learn the playbook. You gotta know the ins and outs. You gotta want to block. No block, no rock on this team. So I think he's gonna do well. Bryson Rogers, I'm waiting to still see it.
Our buddy David Greenshield is giving you props for showing up on the Team Up North podcast. Folks, that would be the Michigan channel here, the voice of college football. But of course, this coming from David, of course, cannot say the name Michigan. I get it. I didn't for a long time myself. Much respect for going into enemy territory.
Well, thank you, David. I appreciate it. I was born and raised in it, so I think I'm just kind of used to it.
Yeah. So how'd you become a Buckeyes fan?
Oh, my dad. He was at Ferris State for 2 years. Didn't want to be in Michigan anymore in the state. Didn't want to play football anymore. Came down to Ohio State to be a student. And from that point on, my mom made a choice. And she made the right choice, not be a state fan, a Michigan fan anymore. Sorry about my dog. And then I was just born into it, and I never looked back. I didn't care to look back. I just, I'm really blessed, Mark. Football means a lot to me. It means a lot to my family, actually. My goodness, Mello. And it means a lot to my family, actually. And but to be able to live through what I believe to be the golden era of Ohio State football, man, hey, it feels great. What did Jim Tressel say? Thank God that I'm a Buckeye because there's nothing like it. So.
Well, my kids can thank me as well because they just fell in line with all of my sports teams too. They just followed the lead. They didn't rebel. They just followed straight in line. And David, do I need to remind you, David, that I go on the Michigan podcast every week? I go into enemy territory myself. So some props over here as well.
No, you go on the Michigan podcast with Steve Dees too. So.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Oh yes.
So Garrison, the last thing I got for you, unless you want to go off on anything else, is without Jack Sawyer and JTT, who's going to put pressure on the quarterback? And even Tyleik Williams, who I thought wow, he was phenomenal down the stretch, especially he had a great season top to bottom. Are you a bit concerned about having premier pass rushers step into those roles? I'm
curious about what it looks like. I think that's a safe way for me to say it. You know, when you look at Jack and JT, I think, you know, we saw it in spurts or maybe once a year until you know, where they would go crazy, have a really good game. I mean, JT in my lifetime has the second best defensive player performance in college football I've ever seen in my life. Number one being Ndamukong Suh against Texas, but you never saw it again, nor did you see anything close to it. So one of the biggest problems I had with them was consistency. But I understand that the high level that they could reach. Also, people forget what they did in the run game. That being JTT and Sawyer was huge. I mean, they're two very large defensive ends, around the 270, 6'4" range. What I think and Tyreek Williams, it's hard to replace that. I think he's one of the most underrated Ohio State players in history. I think what he did at that position was awesome. I thought he anchored it very well. This upcoming season, I think you have more athletic guys. I think you have guys that have higher motors, like Caden Curry. I think his motor is way up there. Also, I love that Caden Curry has in the times that we've seen him, he's always making plays. That's one thing I know about Caden Curry. If he's on the field, he's making plays. Kenyatta Jackson Jr., really talented, gonna be an NFL player. I think he's gonna be the guy you gotta look towards. Once you look after that, you're talking about Josh Mickens. You're looking at I believe CJ Hicks will be, I do believe CJ Hicks will be the first defensive end or edge player off the bench. And then I think you're going to see a lot of other guys there. D tackle it's light. It's light, and there's talent, but it's light. I mean, Hero Kanu leaving hurt. Cause I thought he was going to play a lot this season. But you still have Ty McDonald. You still have Edric Houston, who is the most talented player on that on the side of the ball in terms of defensive line. Mark, like I said, it's light, but the guys are there. It's going to be some growing pains, I think.
Garrison, good to see you, man. Thanks for stopping by. I appreciate it. Always good to talk Buckeyes with you. And again, folks, just make it simple. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And yes, blame me for every other Tuesday when you show up and there's not a show. But then you can just watch videos. So you can do that. So it's every other Tuesday, but it's Monday, Wednesday, Thursday with the group from our Ohio State channel, a cast of thousands led by Garrison. Garrison, we appreciate all that you do over there.
Thank you,
and
Mark.
Again, we do the Wednesday show as well with me when you got to put up with me doing the Wednesday show. All right, Garrison, appreciate you, man.
Before I leave, yesterday you had our guy from Iowa on there, correct? Was that yesterday?
Yesterday. Well, we do an Iowa show on Tuesday.
Okay. I gotta show up because I did admit I am changing my 0-9 prediction because I wasn't confident in it. Simply because like when you kind of got you didn't get on me about it, but I could look in your eyes and tell when I said 0-9, you were kind of disappointed. So
it can happen. It can happen. You know, if we were sitting here a year ago and somebody said Florida State's going to go 2-10, I would have been like, what? So it can happen.
I got to reassess it. I'll put it that way.
Okay. Have you heard about my plus or minus 3 rule, Garrison?
Say again?
Have you heard about my plus or minus 3 rule?
I have not.
Okay. There's probably people in the chat that are rolling in their eyes because they've heard this about 52 times, but this is the deal. Hit me about 10 years ago, probably, and looking at all these preseason publications, Street and Smith, Lindy's, Athlon's, that they are way too conservative on their predictions, because I would look at last year's standings, I would look at their predictions, and basically they're predicting almost the same thing to happen. Maybe an 8-4 becomes a 7-5 or whatever for these teams across the country. And it hit me. I wonder how many teams on a regular basis have a drastic improvement or decline from the previous season. So I started to track this from year to year, and I picked 3 to be the number. Now there's nothing magical about 3, but I kind of consider that to be a significant improvement. You go from 6-6 to 9-3, that's significant. You go from 6-6 to 3-9, that's significant on the negative side. So I started to track this. How many teams last year, Garrison, from 2023 to 2024 in the power conferences, 70 teams, how many do you think either had that much of a jump in wins or decline in wins? And folks, you can play along in the chat. How many teams from 2023 to 2024 went up at least 3 wins or down at least 3 wins from the previous season?
Since 2023?
From 2023 to 2024.
2.
2. What do you have for us in the chat? I think Jim's been watching me too much. Okay, Timothy.
Oh, am I way off?
You're way off.
Oh, wait, okay.
Okay.
24.
29 is the answer. It's usually around 20. Nice. It was 29 last year. There were 8 in the Big Ten. Northwestern went from 7-5 to 4-8. Illinois went from 5-7 to 9-3. Michigan.
Okay, I was thinking. I forgot it was 3 wins. 3. Okay, 3.
At least 3. Michigan 12-0, 7-5. Washington 12-0, 6-6, et cetera, et cetera. So there were 8 teams in the Big Ten. So all I'm saying there is, when people are projecting what's going to happen this year, you have to be thinking outside the box. And just, you making your comment about your original Iowa prediction, I'm just saying there will be crazy numbers out there that we're not expecting, crazy win totals. So it's going to happen somewhere. So, I'm not telling you not to take your shot. But man, if that program goes 0-9 in the Big Ten next year, wow. That would be something.
That'd be crazy.
But to your credit and to your point, if you go through the schedule and just think, can they lose that game? Sure. Can they lose that game? Sure. Mm-hmm. Yes. They could lose them all.
There was a lot of them.
All right, man.
Thank you. Appreciate you. Have a good rest of the show.
Sure. All right, Garrison.
I'll be watching.
It's our guy Garrison. Once again, it's the Buckeyes channel, Ohio State Football Talk. Man, we've got a lot of shows over there. So just make that a destination. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday night shows. And I'm on there with Steve Hellwagon and also Tony Gerdeman on Wednesday morning at 11 a.m. Eastern. Troy either nailed it or he has just heard me way too many times. Mark, you going to saddle up in C-Bus? Like when? I can be up there at some point. Sure, I can do that. Is there a reason to, other than, are we talking about for like the spring game? I will not be there for the spring game or whatever they're doing. I got you for the spring game. I will not be. I have heard from what I think are reliable sources, Doreen, is that you're going to do a little doubleheader Ohio State, Michigan spring games. That's what I've heard. I got you for the spring game or the spring. What is it? The spring something else that starts with an S. The spring challenge. The spring showcase. The spring showcase for the Buckeyes. Give us some football. The NCAA shot down that idea that Colorado and Syracuse had about playing scrimmages, which kind of hurts me because you know what I have to say about spring games. I would love to see free spring games. And of course, Doreen, you already know this, but TJ and the boys are doing it up right there. They're going to be living in style there at the Michigan game with their nice plush surroundings and accommodations across from the stadium. So I can't wait to see that. But we will make the grounds for spring games maybe next year. We can do that. Doreen was the first Ohio State member over on the Buckeyes channel. So we need to get some more over there. So Doreen, thank you so much for that. All right, next up, where were we? Okay, we were going through the Buckeyes picking up one of the best defenders in the country. We pretty much wrapped that up. Let's check this out. This is, of course, our Instagram, so please follow us there. If you're already on Instagram, so it's not as toxic as Twitter. So if you're afraid of that, and you should be, don't fear. Go on Instagram. There's nobody trash talking on Instagram. You just get to see it. Instagram is just kind of a light, fluffy, nice, and friendly platform. I don't see anything nasty on Instagram. I don't think you can really, unless you're going to exchange DMs with people. I know that I see comments to certain posts on Instagram that are, and maybe I contribute to it to a certain extent, that are a bit, shall we say, negative or harsh at times, because some people deserve it. Some people need to be called out, but actually, it's a nice little platform there on Instagram. We'll just keep it at that. And we've got our guys, Gabe and also Patrick, doing a heck of a job on our Instagram. And this has been a common theme that they've been posting over the past couple of weeks. They've been looking at various quarterbacks who are kind of on the border. Players with talent, potential. Maybe they've done something at this level, but really haven't shown that they are true superstars. So this is Texas A&M's Marcel Reed. What will he do in 2025? Check that out. Previous posts. What's going on here? We've got... yes, this is Jeremiah Love shredding the Penn State defense. What about DJ Lagway at Florida? This was a little April Fool's fun, I do believe. Leonard Fournette just abusing people, if you forgot. Will Jackson Arnold, what will he do in 2025 as the new Auburn starting quarterback coming in from OU? And can't get enough of Tim Tebow. All right, so that's our Instagram. Please check it out. What do we've got coming in from Caden? Caden the man. BYU is better than Notre Dame and Michigan. Sorry. Let's read the super chat correctly. BYU is better than Notre Dame. It's quite clever. And Michigan. Okay. Well, I don't believe so. This cannot be proven one way or the other sitting here in the middle of April. But so Caden was on here the other day. He gave us a call the other day. And based on Caden's projections of Michigan, Notre Dame, and Alabama, he has those three schools going 20-16 this year in the regular season. And I went out on a limb to say those three schools will do better than 20-16. All right, next up. And keep in mind, everyone, we've got Ryan Herrings from Locked On Wisconsin showing up at 5 p.m. Eastern Time, followed by Spencer Mclaughlin from Locked On Oregon Ducks. And that will be at 6 p.m. Eastern. So working a little overtime today. Next up, we've got this gem. About Tulane quarterback TJ Finley. Now, TJ Finley, if this is the TJ Finley that I know of, he's played for about 18 schools. He's been at Auburn, Texas State, all over the place. He's been suspended following his arrest Wednesday in New Orleans on a charge of illegal possession of stolen things worth more than $25,000. He's 23. Finley's name is Tyler Jamal. I did not know that. TJ Finley, whose name is Tyler Jamal. Am I missing something here? Why is his name not Tyler Jamal? His name's TJ Finley. We've known him in college football as TJ Finley, but he's Tyler Jamal. He's been booked and released. Tulane said in a statement that the length of the suspension will depend on the outcome of the case. The school cited privacy laws in declining to comment further. University police responded to an address where a truck was blocking a driveway. After looking up the license plate, police saw it registered to a vehicle stolen in Atlanta. Finley Jamal arrived to move the car and informed the officer that he had bought the truck recently. He's scheduled to appear in court June 1st. So, yeah, if you look up TJ Finley, transferred to Tulane in December after spending the 2024 season with Western Kentucky, competing for the team starting quarterback job in the spring with transfers Caden Samanza and Donovan Leary. Yeah, Finley started his college career at LSU, transferred to Auburn, transferred to Texas State, transferred to Western Kentucky, transferred to Tulane. TJ Finley is the poster child of the transfer portal, and now he is I guess been confirmed. I don't know if it's been confirmed. Let's not call him a thief unless it's been confirmed, but it's not looking good. $25,000 worth of something. Okay, Troy. Thank you for the. Okay, I got it. Yes. TJ, Tyler Jamal. I was thinking that they were saying that that was his full name, like not Tyler Jamal Finley. I would have been able to follow that. All right. Okay. I thought maybe we had some kind of, Fausto Carmona situation. Remember him? Baseball fans, Fausto Carmona, who then became what was his name? Something Rodriguez, right? Does anyone remember Cleveland Indians pitcher Fausto Carmona? And then we found out he had been pitching for the Indians for like 5 or 6 years. He was a staple in the starting rotation, and suddenly that's not his name. He faked his name for some reason to get into the country or something. And he was, what was he? I know there's got to be a baseball fan out there that remembers this. Maybe not. Mike says, Mark, I like menace into the fray as a Michigan fan. I don't know what that means, Mike. You can give me a call if you'd like and explain. Back to the headlines. we are going to have apparently a 137th team, according to Pete Thamel, in FBS football. So this year we are adding the Blue Hens of Delaware State, and we are adding Missouri State, recently coached by one Bobby Petrino. All right. Now we've got Sacramento State. Plans to file an application with the NCAA this week to transition to FBS. School sits in the top 20 media market, has been aggressive in hiring coaches and in NIL. The Hornets hired former UNLV offensive coordinator Brennan Marion as head coach in December. And the basketball program hired, remember, Sacramento King star Mike Bibby? Planning to play football in the Big Sky for 2025, which is expected to be the program's last in the FCS. The Hornets had a 3-9 record. So we've got a 3-9 team in the FCS that's looking to go to the FBS. They were in last place in the 12-team conference with a 1-7 record. Usually the teams that are looking to leave the FCS and go to the FBS are some of the better teams, like we've seen recently with James Madison. And who was it last year? There was somebody who played a good season last year straight from the FCS. Anyway, Sacramento State, just another team to keep track of. Our friend Caden is here to let everyone know that Ohio State owns the Big Ten. You would think that being the Buckeyes fan that Caden is, that he would capitalize state. Mike, if you've noticed, it really doesn't matter what reality is to Caden. It just doesn't. I did not know that, Troy. Speaking of weird names for baseball players, Nomar Garcia Parra got the name Nomar because that's his dad's name spelled backwards. Did not know that. Willie Hernandez changed his name. Okay, here we go. We got to catch up with Caden. We got to make sure that Caden gets his due. Thank you, Caden. I appreciate the contribution here. Caden is sponsoring the show today. Thank you for that. Probably paying for about 32 seconds of my time, but hey, Ohio State's era of destruction is at hand, and forget about baseball. Moose, I got to say, you're right. Dorian has become quite the conduit between the Ohio State and Michigan fan bases. Dorian just makes sure that you don't get contaminated, poisoned in any way. Be careful. Be careful out there. Don't play with fire too much. $600 per hour. Did you do the calculation already? $600 per hour. That would be a decent going wage. I would think at this point that I figure do we know the calculation on what, I can't think of his name. Pat McAfee. What does he make per hour? I'm at least worth that much. Pat McAfee, by the way, is in some hot water. Did you hear about this? I would never have known about this. But I was talking to our friend Ruby Dreher on our Ole Miss show. I was talking to her off the air, and she was explaining the Pat McAfee, why he insisted on going after this poor girl on social media. That's an Ole Miss student. Did you hear about this? Do you know anything about this? I did not prepare to go into this, but yes. Blue Wolverine, we are working on an NIL package to take Doreen in the transfer portal. Well, I'm sure Doreen is happy about that. So collect all the money that you can, and I am going to put my faith in Doreen staying put and being, pardon the contradiction, true blue to the Buckeyes. Some people saying that Pat McAfee is lame. I don't like it, but it gets clicks. So this was kind of a disturbing story, and I want to get this straight, and I'm not going to name names because I would have to look up the young lady's name. But apparently, Pat McAfee became somewhat fascinated with a social media rumor that an Ole Miss female student was having relations, we will say, with her boyfriend's dad. What any of this had to do with sports, I could not figure this out when I looked this article up. When somebody told me about this, I looked up the article, a few different articles, and saw nothing sports related to this. But Pat McAfee thought it was fun and to talk about, and apparently it's not true. And now he and ESPN are possibly being sued. Mike G, you are losing me on these comments. Of course, we are good friends with the folks at Menace to Sports. We got Chris Drew on here last Friday, and Zach Smith comes on a regular basis. And of course, they do a great show. So I don't get this. Mark, Menace to Sports. Okay, when I participate in there, all bets are off. It's the opposite of your content. I have no idea what that. All bets are on here. Is that what you're saying? Have no idea what you're talking about. Her boyfriend was a quarterback. Oh, quarterback at Ole Miss? Like the quarterback who will be most likely Austin Simmons? People behave here. Okay. That wasn't really that well explained by our buddy Mike G. I really don't care if you guys trash talk all you want. I don't really want to see people calling each other like certain names. I would like to refrain from that. And of course, keep out the politics and the gender comments and so forth, even though I have certainly strong opinions on such things. And you can see those on Twitter occasionally. So I am certainly not afraid of those kind of conversations, but we're talking college football here. And actually, Zach Smith and I are friends on Facebook and elsewhere, and certainly we share pretty much the same perspective on those things as well. Moron. Is Gregory saying that because I call people morons a lot? I have tried not to do that recently. Jackson, all I have to do is drop a name of some type of social media page or anything related, and immediately I've got Jackson right there. Which reminds me, I believe we are, it's 5:21. Let me check on our buddy Ryan Herrings. We might have an issue here because we were supposed to be joined by our guy here. Just to make sure there's not an issue, because Ryan was supposed to join us at all right, we'll have to make sure here. Looks like I screwed up. That's on me. Although I don't know why that did not take. Huh, that is strange. Okay. Regardless, let's get back to this. What's funny about you guys saying that this is a much more restricted chat? I don't know that we've got any mods in this chat, so it's not restricted. I probably shouldn't say that, but that the chat is not restricted. I don't know that we've got any mods that have showed up. I don't even know who our mods are anymore on this channel. We used to have about 50, except for Jackson, of course. Well, we're good, Minnie. We will get the Wisconsin guy on here soon. That was my fault, but not my fault. In that Twitter has been very delayed in sending links recently, and I don't know what the deal is. So I sent the link, and I sent the link to our two guests, but I think I left the page before the link fully loaded, and that was our issue. Issue corrected, and fortunately for us, one Ryan Herrings has been flexible to come on here 20 minutes late. My apologies, Ryan. I am so sorry. I did post the link to your DM, but I have noticed this recently, at least with my Twitter, is that it's been rejected a bunch of times and had to retry, and I didn't notice that. And anyway, we finally got you set up. So it's good to see you.
It's great to be here as always. And if you remember, I think the second time we were going to do a show together, I messed up the time. Like I showed up an hour late in the middle of an Iowa conversation. So I think we're just even now.
Okay. We're even. We're 1-1. And I will say that certainly Wisconsin would love to be 1-1 against Alabama after this season, but because they took it on the chin and they're going to have to go down to Tuscaloosa. That's going to be interesting. But certainly we made Minnie happy here because she was waiting for some whiskey talk. All right, let's do it up with the Badgers. So when I think Wisconsin football, of course, I think back to a couple of years ago, and when Luke Fickell was hired, I thought, home run hire. This is the best hire of the offseason. And just because I'm seeing Minnie's name, I will be a little bit more specific, because when I put out my coaches hiring rankings for that offseason, I think I put Luke Fickell 1 and Matt Rule 2, or maybe it was the other way around. I think it was there. Yeah, that would have been, or would they would have been one season off. Regardless, I thought Luke Fickell was a great hire. Now here we are after 7-6 and 5-7, and a brutal schedule coming up again this year. And what are you and the faithful thinking at this point?
I mean, listen, you're not wrong. Everybody, I should say, just about everybody in Wisconsin thought the same thing. Like, what a home run. You went and got Luke Fickell, the playoff coach that brought Cincinnati to the promised land. You're going to modernize this thing. And it just hasn't worked. Now, some of it is 2 years in Wisconsin. I think they made a mistake with Phil Longo. They've acknowledged that mistake. He was the offensive coordinator they brought in from North Carolina. He's moved on. Jeff Grimes has come in and has promised more of a return to what you're used to in Wisconsin with more modern elements. So a fullback, more motion, a little bit more. We're just going to run the ball. So I think there's some renewed optimism that maybe this is a little better fit for Wisconsin. But yeah, like this schedule is really rough. And how do you measure progress, even if you're a little better, when you have to play a Bama, a Michigan, Ohio State? You have to go to Autzen. You're still going to have to play in Iowa and Illinois. They're playing, I think it's 8 teams last year that were ranked. Indiana's on the schedule. This team could be better and still win 6 games. So, yeah, it's a brutal schedule. There is some renewed optimism that the offensive coordinator hire is at least going to align a little bit better with what Wisconsin has to do to be successful.
Now, Boise State certainly, yeah, prolific on offense. I don't know that he gets to bring Ashton Genty with him, however. Now, if we look at the quarterback situation, of course, Tyler Van Dyke out, Braden Locke out, Billy Edwards in, competing with Danny O'Neill from San Diego State. So how do you kind of shake that one out?
Yeah, so the quarterback room is really interesting. And, last year, to your point, they had Tyler Van Dyke, who came in, and in week 3 against on the really the first series against Alabama, a non-contact injury, and it's just a terrible situation. So the quarterback room was kind of blown up from the start last year. And now everybody's gone. You mentioned Locke, you mentioned Tyler Van Dyke. The number 3 guy's gone as well, Mabry Metori, who was a freshman last year. So they brought in an entirely new room. And it's a little different this year. Last year, there was a competition, if you remember, in camp. It was Van Dyke and Locke, who's going to win it. And eventually Locke emerged, which I think was probably a foreshadowing of the fact that this room's not quite good enough. That you had a battle between those 2 guys, because Locke should have come in and just gotten that job. He should have just grabbed it by the horns and wasn't able to. This year's a little different. Billy Edwards has come in and he's the guy. From talking to people in the program, there's no competition. Billy Edwards is the guy. Really, really well liked already in the locker room. But it's, you're still talking about a guy who had 15 touchdowns and 9 picks last year. It's not a prolific guy coming over from Maryland. I think there's optimism that he can be solid. That's a word I've used a lot this offseason. Can the quarterback room go from, it was 17th in the Big Ten in passing efficiency last year? That's pretty bad. Can it go from that to solid? I think Billy gives you the potential to have a solid quarterback guy. Someone who's experienced. He's played in the Big Ten. He's a tough player. He can run the ball. He can move it with a little bit with his legs. And if he can become decent, having just a decent quarterback from where Wisconsin has been the last 2 years makes a dramatic difference. So that's the hope there with Billy Edwards. O'Neal started last year. So as a number 2, you could do way worse as a guy who started a bunch of games, has a little bit of athleticism. That's a pretty good number 2. So I think there's optimism in the program that they've upgraded at their number 1 spot and their number 2 spot in the quarterback room. But again, it's a low bar from where they've been. So if they can get decent, that can make a big difference for the running game and some of the pass catching options they have.
We got Ryan Herrings here breaking down the Badgers, Wisconsin football, as they go to work in the spring there in Madison. You can catch Ryan's work on Locked On Badgers. Ryan, when is the best time to catch you on your Locked On show?
Yeah, so usually shows drop at 6 a.m., but if anything breaks, we always go live. We talk about commitments, new coaching hires. I'm sure we'll talk about the fun schedule that awaits Wisconsin coming up. So really anytime, you can always hit me up on Twitter at Ryan and Bucky, talk all things Badgers, Big Ten football, basketball. Love doing all of it.
Ever since Barry Alvarez got this thing rolling in the early 90s, there's been a premier back, and usually 2 and sometimes 3. And Ches Malusi and Braylon Allen would be kind of the end of that in regards to known commodities. So what does the backfield look like this year?
Yeah, that's a great question. So they have 2 redshirt sophomores. Sophomores that they're really high on. Freshmen last year, Darian Dupree and Dylan Jones, who were both 4-star guys. And they like both those backs, but it's very unproven. To your point, there was a long line of we know who the next bell cow is, right? When you had a Monte Ball, you knew you had a Melvin Gordon behind him. You knew you had a Corey Clement in the wings. There's always that next guy. And it's a little bit more of we need to see it now. So there's a couple young kids there they really like. They purposely did not go in the portal this offseason to find a back because they believe in the young talent in that room. But now they're going to have to prove it. And it's a bit of a question mark. There's physical tools there for sure. But there's no proven names in that room, like you mentioned. And it's a bit of a wait and see. And some of that is this offense too. So going back to a point I made earlier, the running game is impacted if you can't throw the ball, which the Badgers were not able to do last year consistently. So there is hope that, Billy Edwards, Jeff Grimes, new offensive coordinator, they can open it up a little bit. And that should make it a little easier for these young running backs to get some room. But it's a lot of just wait and see in Wisconsin. I'll tell you this, people have really shifted from that first year where Fickell came in and they made a big production of it. The spring game that year, they called it the launch. I was there. Nothing launched. They threw 3 picks in that spring game. It was pretty bad, but they made a big production of it because Fickell was a big deal. And it's much more guarded optimism now, I would say. It's much more of we need to prove it. They know they need to prove it, and fans are much more, we need to see it. So that's kind of the mood in Madison right now. It's been a couple years of hype. We kind of have to see it now.
CJ Williams moves on. Not a huge deal there. Will Pauling is the big loss at wide receiver. Is there anyone that is going to threaten the defense?
Yeah, that's a great question. So that's one of the bigger areas of intrigue / optimism this spring. So you mentioned Will Pauling moving on. 2 years ago, Will Pauling was one of the best slot receivers in the Big Ten, potentially the country. Last year was a weird version of Pauling. He had a lot of drops. Notre Dame picked him up. Still a very good player, but he wasn't quite as good last year. There's two guys on the outside I'd highlight. Vinny Anthony played last year, average, I think it was 18 yards per catch, something like that. He has legit speed on the boundary. He's a really interesting guy who's developed. And then the Badgers this offseason went and got Jaden Ballard from Ohio State. And Ballard never really played there, but it wasn't for a lack of physical tools. Ballard was a true Ohio State receiver in terms of size, speed. He's just been behind. I mean, we all know who's been there, Harrison and Jermaine and Smith and all these Ibuka, right? He just hasn't been able to get on the field, but he is really turning heads in spring. He's already running with the ones. He's got some really nice highlights already out of spring. He's the type of guy that Wisconsin doesn't get in that room often, that might have slipped through the cracks at Ohio State. So talking to someone inside the program, they said specifically of Ballard, he's really basically pissed off and ready to show people why he's a number one, why he can be that type of athlete. So I would highlight those two guys, Vinny and Ballard on the outside, as potential guys that could really make some noise this year in the Big Ten.
Ryan, I see only 2 commits for this year thus far. Obviously, a lot of work to do before December. This last class was 24th in the country. The recruiting classes aren't quite as important as they used to be with the transfer portal. And of course, Luke Fickell went deep into the transfer portal, especially the first cycle. But has he made a difference in recruiting? Because we know what Paul Chryst and what that looked like, especially at the end of his tenure.
Yeah, so he's done a pretty good job, I would say. Now, this offseason, you mentioned 2 recruits, kind of a bit of a slow start for the Badgers. They lost a key cog in the recruiting department. For any USC fans that are watching this show, Max Steinecker is a tremendous recruiter, up-and-coming star. And he left this year to go join USC's recruiting department. I think we're seeing some of the impacts of that midstream. When you lose one of your key guys midstream in a cycle, I think long-term the Badgers will be fine, but it might impact this class. And by the way, we're already seeing some targets that Wisconsin and Max Steinecker were in on are now crystal balled to USC. So I think we're seeing some of the immediate impacts of that. If you're a USC fan, he's incredible. Max Steinecker is going to absolutely do incredible things at USC. So I think that's hurt this year's a little bit of a slower start. In general, he's done a good job of recruiting some of the spots Wisconsin has struggled with. They've done a good job landing a couple 4-star defensive linemen. I'm pretty sure you covered the Xavier Lucas situation, or at least maybe we mentioned it, where Lucas was a Wisconsin commit, went to Miami, Wisconsin, like the whole thing. But that was a really big commitment for Wisconsin, 4-star cornerback out of Florida. So he has gotten Wisconsin some athletes that they typically don't have. But again, it's just kind of become, that's all great, but we lost 42-10 to Iowa, right? That's all great, but we won 5 games last year. So it's become very much a Wisconsin. We need to see it this year. We need to see some improvement. And that might not mean as much in the win-loss because of the schedule we referenced, but you can't lose by 32 to Iowa when they throw 10 passes type of a thing. Like that's just can't happen again.
That is a bit rough. Ryan Herrings here, Locked On Badgers. Ryan, we appreciate you stopping by. It's always good to see you, man. And everybody check out Ryan's show.
Really appreciate it. Always a joy to be on the show, man, and can't wait for some college football.
There it is. See you, Ryan. All right, good stuff out of Ryan. Setting us up on the Badgers. We got Spencer Mclaughlin standing by. He should be checking in about 6 p.m. Eastern time, making me stay late. How about that? I do it for you, folks. Locked On Ducks with Spencer. And where were we on the news of the day, by the way? Oh, Sacramento State to the FBS. Enough of that. And then we've got our buddy TJ Finley, who's running amok and stealing $25,000 worth of something. Drew Pine. We all know that Drew Pine never could play. He just wasn't real good. But he has entered the transfer portal. So if you're looking for a marginal quarterback, you go after Drew Pine, who went to Missouri and, of course, Notre Dame. Looking to move to his 4th school. Also Arizona State. Yeah, Notre Dame, Arizona State, Missouri. I'm guessing that Drew Pine is going to be backing up somewhere, or he is going to be a group of 5 quarterback. Let's back up for Brady Cook. Earned 1 start. Led the Tigers to a 30-23 comeback over Oklahoma. Bo Prabula comes in from Penn State to Mizzou. He'll compete with junior redshirt Sam Horn and true freshman Matt Zollers. Former ESPN 300 recruit Drew Pine. We have certainly left the link there in the chat. We will do it again if anyone wants to call. Spencer McLaughlin, Locked On Ducks, headed our way probably at 6 p.m. Eastern. In the meantime, if you want to talk college football, whatever you want to talk about, the line is in the chat. Yes, I've seen a guy with 5 schools now. 4 schools for Drew Pine. I've seen 5. And we had a guy playing for Miami last year, a tight end who is working on his 9th season in college football. 9 seasons. Yes, that is a bit much. Check us out, folks, on Twitter. There is our Voice of College Football Twitter page. Check it out. What do we have? Anything interesting? That looks familiar. And then we've got our quarterback questionnaires, schedules, all sorts of fun. Our mini Ohio State shows. Our Oklahoma show is gaining rave reviews, folks. Rave reviews from our Oklahoma folks with Chad and Tyranny on our Sooner show. I believe that's on Monday night. All right. Welcome into the Voice of College Football. We got Caden here. Here we go.
Good evening, Mark. How are you today, sir?
I'm doing just fine. Caden, what's up?
I'm actually honestly gleaming with joy today.
Gleaming with joy. Well, it's unfortunate that we can't see that, but I'll take your word for it.
Because everything is proceeding as I have foreseen. And I am enjoying college football, the beginning of it, as much as the spring practice and the summer practice is going on and will go on until the first week or the second week or the last week of August that my Ohio State Buckeyes play their first home game.
Yes.
If you caught my drift.
And your point is, Caden?
When we walk in to play Texas at home in the Horseshoe against Arch Manning, my one point about Ohio State's defense will come to full circle. That Ohio State's defense will not only show Texas that they are a true physical and very dangerous defense, but they will beat Texas very badly, and I foresee it.
Caden, I would suggest that you would be happy with a win. A 1-point win would be fine.
I'm more of a blowout type of guy, honestly. It's just more satisfying.
Okay.
What? You don't like blowout games?
No, I didn't say that. I did not. Well, no, I typically don't like to watch blowouts if I'm watching a sporting event, but I think that you would be satisfied by beating some of the best teams in the country by just get the job done, win the game by 1 point, because I'm still remembering that I'm talking to the guy that predicted 50-point wins last year that didn't happen.
And you're also talking to the guy who also talked to Coach Laurinaitis, as I said last week on your show in particular, that I had a conversation with him. May I remind you?
Oh, you don't have to remind me. When somebody says something that ludicrous, I typically remember it.
I find your lack of impulse very disturbing. and I find it very honestly disturbing because I have my
what am I lacking?
insights. Your lack of knowing the fact that I have the insides in Ohio State, and not only that, I've been with the coaches themselves, and not only with Coach Day, Coach Harline, but I've talked to also Coach Laurinaitis. And as I said before, when I had that conversation with him, it was honestly needed.
So, Caden, I am not an expert on this topic. I'm not an expert psychologist, but I believe that if an individual is living in la la land and they are living and detached from reality at like the age of 3 or 4, that's somewhat normal. But once we get past, I don't know, about 5, 6 years old, that we should all be living in the here and now and understanding of reality.
You honestly do not impress me, Mark. You do not.
Okay, well, I would expect that possibly could be stated by other people. I'm not here to impress you.
I'm just saying in general.
What about me does not impress you, Caden? Because I would love to be able to work on those things that don't impress you so I can meet your standards.
Just as I said before on the show that I first saw the downfall of Michigan and Alabama last week, and it will come to fruition. My prophetic words will come into full circle, and everything is transpiring as according to my design. As a good friend of mine once said.
Okay. I just didn't know if maybe you were picking up some kind of line from some I don't know, some type of cable show with some really bad acting. I don't know.
But the bottom line is, Mark, no one is safe from Ohio State's defense, and no one will be. Texas isn't going to have an easy game against Ohio State at the Horseshoe. Texas is going to have to fight. But I know Texas will have their first loss in Ohio Stadium by a very large margin. Let me be
Okay,
honest.
good. Well, let's stop with the mindless speculation of what's going to happen in September because you're not really saying anything different here. Let's focus on the here and now and what's going on in this past season, which of course was an Ohio State national championship. But to Mike G's point here, I know that you and Mike G went back and forth there in the chat. Mike is correctly stating after you had stated, I believe, in a super chat, and thank you so much for that. I appreciate it, that Ohio State owns the Big Ten.
Well, let me ask Mike this. Who has the national championship ring and the trophy?
That is the national championship. Ohio State has not won a Big Ten since 2020.
Well, we hold the national championship trophy, so unless Oregon or Michigan holds the championship right now or in the future, then. But until then, Ohio State is the current national champion.
Yes, I think everyone in the chat is understanding of that. That Ohio State won the national championship. They did not win the Big Ten, nor have they for 4 consecutive years. 4 consecutive
But it
years.
feels good to win that national championship.
Of course it does. I am not arguing that point. I am arguing about supremacy in the Big Ten. That does not belong to Ohio State right now.
Supremacy does.
No, it does not.
And is owned by Ohio State. And that is the bottom line.
It is not owned by Ohio State in the Big Ten right now.
You can disagree with me on that, Mark. And
It's
I'll
really
let
not
you.
a disagreement. It's a fact. It's not a matter of opinion. You know, had they won, let's say, 4 or 5 consecutive Big Ten championships and didn't win it this past year, but went on and won the national championship, I would say, you know, even though they didn't win the Big Ten this past year, they've won in so many consecutive years, plus they won the national championship, that they are still the program in the Big Ten. But no, there's an argument over best program in the Big Ten. I believe it's Ohio State, but they have not won a championship in this conference for 4 consecutive years.
But the bottom line is, who won the national championship?
I
Ohio
understand
State.
who won the national
Enough said, Mark.
championship. Then you need to be more accurate with your statements, Caden.
And let me just be clear of another team in the Big Ten who will not be an elite program in the Big Ten, USC. USC is a long way from being an undefeated school in the Big Ten. Especially, I've been hearing USC fans go on for the last couple of weeks saying blah, 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 et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And particularly one of those Southern Cal fans I've heard running his mouth for a long time since Ohio State's won the national championship is your good friend Tim Prangley and all of them over there. It's not impressive.
Well, Caden, you might be happy to know that we are revamping our USC channel. You may just see me over there hosting some shows, talking some USC football.
Well, it's good. Because I hated Tim Prangley running his mouth about my Buckeyes for the last 4 weeks. Months, actually, to be specific. I found his lack of faith in Ohio State disturbing.
Tim, I'm going to play you a clip here. If you'll listen to this for just a second, it'll just take a second for me to set this up. And you can take a guess as to who I am responding to. Okay? Normal callers. Are there any out there? Normal callers. Normal callers. Are there any out there? Normal callers.
This was entertaining. And that was pretty funny. You know
It's
what?
still playing. I even clicked off the window and it's still playing. Oh my goodness. Wow. It's I can't get rid of it now. All right. There we go.
That was funny. I actually posted it to my posts on my YouTube channel here saying that you have lost your mind because of of my prophetic warnings.
Well, some people have called it out there in the political realm, Trump derangement syndrome. I guess it's maybe Caden derangement syndrome possibly is affecting me at this point. Between you and our buddy Chris Foote, I think I had to take like back-to-back calls from you guys.
Well, I enjoy Chris calling on here because at least Chris is a favorable caller on this channel besides myself.
Favorable. Love to see
Just
that word defined.
Because the way Chris comes on here and absolutely just states the absolute facts he does, I can personally agree with him on most of his points.
That doesn't surprise me.
What it doesn't surprise me that you disagree with him 99% of the time. And as far as my last comment, my last super chat to you said, Ole Miss football is garbage. Well, it is. Ole Miss is not a threat in the SEC. They will not be, and they will never be.
All right? They will never be a threat in the SEC.
As long as Georgia remains the most dominant team in the SEC, which they will be.
Okay. You do understand that if you're just talking about a threat, you didn't say that they won't win the SEC. You're basically saying that they won't even contend for the SEC. They came within one game of playing in the SEC championship game, and they beat Georgia by 3 scores last year.
Still, they're not going to be a big-time team in the SEC. Georgia was softened up by Ohio State in the national championship final round in the Peach Bowl. We softened Georgia up.
All right.
Now, you can disagree with me on that, but I feel, and can say this, I bet if you asked any University of Georgia fan when Ohio State played them in the Peach Bowl, yeah, that gave them a heck of a time. See, we were the only team that went up and down the field with Georgia during that entire game in the Peach Bowl. Did anybody else score as many touchdowns in that Peach Bowl game as us against Georgia? Nope. Everybody else either got blown out or, well, lost by a touchdown or 2 touchdowns. We came in by 1 point to beat Georgia. Although we may have lost to Georgia, we still came in within 1 point of beating them.
If there's something that drives me off this channel, it's going to be insane, moronic phone callers.
And I'm guessing you're calling me one of them.
Okay. So what was just stated here is that a game from 2022 that was won by Georgia, by the way, but a game in 2022, a great game, softened Georgia 2 years later.
And I didn't stutter about it.
No, you did not stutter. And that's probably an even greater indictment that you actually fully are convicted by these statements.
I've asked every Ohio State fan, and even my friends who are Ohio State fans about it, and they agreed with me.
Well, I can only imagine the company you keep, Caden.
I'm also friends with one of the greatest Ohio State podcasts on YouTube, the Ohio Podcast, if you don't tune into that show or you're just too lazy to.
I'm not aware of the Ohio Podcast. I'm sure they're doing a fine job there.
And they actually agreed with me on that term. That in that game, we softened up Georgia. And that's how, Georgia started going down a little bit.
Ohio State softened up Georgia, that then went out and won the national championship game by 58 points.
And then what happened the next year?
They went undefeated until the SEC championship game. So, Caden, this is just it's just gone off. It's gone from its typical insanity to complete, I don't have a word for it. Nonsense is way too tame. But I do appreciate the call. Always know, Caden, regardless of what I tell you on these phone calls, that I appreciate the call and the breath before you take your first word out of your mouth. The rest of it, though, is kind of difficult to take.
And to my buddy Tim Prangley down there in Southern Cal, just know next time you talk about Ohio State, I am calling you out on YouTube. Just so you know. You and Mark Rogers out.
Yes, calling me out, and Tim Prangley. And do you have any other people you're taking out today?
Oh, Spaz from Oregon. I've already called him out several times when we beat him in the Rose Bowl, saying what happened.
I ask. All right,
I called out
Caden.
your buddies down from Ole Miss and Texas. I asked him, what in the heck happened to y'all?
My buddies from where?
The Texas Voice College Football Show and the Ole Miss Voice College Football Show. I asked what the heck happened.
I host the Ole Miss show.
And I was wondering why they didn't, and I was wondering why Ole Miss didn't show up. Oh wait, I already know that answer.
Okay.
But that's a whole nother subject. But as I said earlier on the show, everything is proceeding as I have foreseen.
Okay. All right, Caden. Thanks for the call. I let that call go on for probably 15 or 20 minutes. There was nothing stated in that call that was either not just completely obvious or complete rubbish. All right. We've got Spencer Mclaughlin stopping by from Locked On Oregon Ducks, Locked On College Football. Soon, hopefully soon. I would have checked out a long time ago, I got to say. Keith, yes, normal callers. I used to get normal callers. Hopefully I wrote a normal book, but not mediocre book. Normal, but still interesting. Disputed National Champions, the link's down in the description section of the video, which reminds me, we recorded earlier today with our guy, Ty Hudson from Tusk Talk with Ty, and I promised him to put the link of his latest video in the description section of our Arkansas video that's to be released first thing in the morning, where we talk about the fate of one Sam Pittman and the possibilities of Bobby Petrino taking over there. We have Clemson and West Virginia playing spring games this Saturday. And as I believe, I don't know that West Virginia is going to be on television. Clemson will not. That's not a good thing. I learned today that Michigan. So I contacted Steve Dace today, Michigan podcast, to say, I'd like for you to be on after the Michigan spring game. And he said, well, I'm not going to be able to watch it for a week. I did not realize that the Michigan spring game is not going to be on television. Is this correct? Really? I don't know what's going on. Where we suddenly are so paranoid as college football head coaches that we can't televise spring games. Rather odd. Guess that gives me less to do. But again, in my future as college football commissioner, there's about 25 things I would be signing into law by executive order on day one. And this would be one of them right there. It would just be figured into the budget. You know, if you want to get something into your budget, in your household budget, you just budget for it. It's fine. And you just work around it, and it's easy. And you would do this in college football. We would say, okay, we've got the revenue share of whatever for all these media rights and all the concessions throughout the country and all the gear and everything that's sold and everything that's made through NIL, all of it, except we're going to take out however much money it costs to put on a spring game, and we're going to pay for everything. Free parking, free tickets, free food, free everything. And I do like the idea of two teams getting together for their spring game, like Colorado and Syracuse tried to do, to play a scrimmage. I like that. All right, folks, we do appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. This is our show, the college football show that we do here Monday through Friday, 4 p.m. Eastern Time, with some exceptional guests like we just had with Ryan Herrings from Locked On Badgers. Now it's, look at this, Spencer Mclaughlin showing up from Locked On Ducks. Spencer, how you doing?
I'm doing great. I love that you're rolling through the lineup of Locked On hosts we got at the network. That shows good judgment, Mark.
There's a good judgment by me and a few good hosts over there. No question about that. You're on the A list. I don't think there's any question about that.
I try to be.
You got two of those shows over there.
I do. I was just working on both of them before I hopped on here, actually. All shows, all content all the time. Who says there's nothing to talk about for college football in April, Mark? Not me. Not I as well. There has to be something to talk about. Otherwise, I'm not going to show up, and I always show up. So what we're going to talk about with you is this Oregon football team, and I guess we'll start with one Dante Moore. Okay, the last time we really saw Dante Moore, and maybe this was blown a bit out of proportion, but he seemed to be on a tear of pick sixes in the Pac-12 there for a few consecutive weeks. So how do you assess his play? Do you think he's going to be challenged in this quarterback battle? Well, I'd like to think so. I really would. I think it'd be good for him to not just be handed the job. I don't know that that's what is going to happen. When Dan Lanning was asked about it to begin spring practice, he said, we're competing at every position, and didn't single out any particular name or any particular spot. I think that what Dante Moore can bring to the table is he can be one of the best quarterbacks in college football. We also saw he's capable of being a quarterback worthy of being benched in college football. So I think there is such a huge range of outcomes for him. And I think that he made an incredibly mature choice to, transfer to Oregon to wait behind Dylan Gabriel for a year and then get the chance. That's part of the reason I fully expect him to win the job over Austin Novosad. And again, I'd like for there to be an actual battle because Austin Novosad is not some slouch. He's a guy going into his third year, and he's got an extra year of watching a veteran quarterback with Will Stein as the offensive coordinator in control. So I think there's certainly a chance. I don't know that I would put it over 10%. This is a staff that when Kenny Dillingham was there as the OC, granted, but Dan Lanning recruited Dante Moore and had him committed before they went out and got Austin Novosad. Dillingham left for ASU. Dante Moore flipped to UCLA. Then they were able to flip Novosad from Baylor. And certainly they didn't, have Novosad committed knowing, oh, well, Dante Moore's coming back in a couple of years. Like, this is a guy they recruited fully thinking 4-star recruit, top 10 quarterback in the class, if I remember correctly. This is a guy they recruited thinking he could be a starting quarterback one day. He has those sorts of traits. He's got a good arm. He's incredibly accurate from, the limited action we have seen. So I think he can be pushed I think Dante Moore can be pushed by Austin Novosad. I do think the ceiling on Dante Moore is higher. And, the coaches have already kind of told you with their career trajectories, they wanted more than they wanted Novosad. So I'm inclined to think it'll be Dante Moore who wins the starting job, but I hope there's an honest to goodness quarterback battle.
No Tez Johnson, no Trayshawn Holden. Evan Stewart comes back. Big game against Ohio State. Went through certain stretches of the season, missing in action to a certain extent, and little productivity unless I'm missing somebody after Evan Stewart.
Yeah, I mean, the receiving core is interesting. I think that and the defensive backfield are the most interesting position groups to watch because there's so many different ways they can play out for Oregon. The receiving core is as stacked with talent as it ever has been, and it's just continuing what Junior Adams built the last couple of years with the Ducks. Like, they have retained almost all the guys that they've recruited from the high school ranks. The transfers they've brought in have done a great job, like Tez Johnson, Gary Bryant Jr. was a transfer who was hurt last year, but he's still around for a 6th season of college football. They've got DeCorian Moore coming in as a number 1 wide receiver recruit in 2025. So I think that for Oregon's wide receiver room, I'm not concerned about the talent level. There is a production question, but I don't question whether you've got guys that are big enough, fast enough, strong enough, talented enough to be a high-end receiving core. I just don't know exactly how that depth chart shakes out, how many wide receivers work their way into the fold. The last 2 years, it's typically been 4 that have been, productive wide receivers. They get 400 or more yards in a season. So I'm curious to see how all that works. But I mean, 5-star Jurion Dickey still has not made an impact at Oregon. He got hurt his first year, buried on the depth chart last year. Does he take a step forward? Kyler Casper's going into his 4th year as an Oregon Duck, former blue chip recruit who's sticking around for some reason. He could certainly go elsewhere and get more reps, but he's still at Oregon for one reason or another. DeCorian Moore, it's hard to see how he doesn't play at least some as a true freshman. Wide receivers, this hype just don't come around. He's the 2nd highest rated recruit Oregon has ever had, regardless of position, and the highest rated wide receiver. And then you've got Evan Stewart coming back, who was great last year. And then you bring in Malik Benson as well, who's been a journeyman in college football, but was the top JUCO or one of the top JUCO receivers a couple of cycles ago, went to Alabama, didn't play a lot, went to Florida State. He was a guy that I think had people thinking Florida State would be good, and he's one of several guys. And then, of course, it was a disaster. And so I don't really know what to expect from him because he's never had 400 receiving yards in a Division I season. But, I know that guys that come out of the JUCO ranks can be incredibly productive. So there are just so many questions swirling around the position room. And heck, maybe it comes down to who does Dante Moore or whoever ends up starting, if it's him or Novosad, who does Dante Moore have the best chemistry with? Who Who does he like the most? What stands out in spring? But I don't know how all that plays out. I think that the spring game is going to be able to tell us a lot.
Spencer, if there's any position in college football from last year that I can give a pass to, it would be anyone playing wide receiver at Florida State. So lack of production. Okay, it's probably not on you because we know what the offensive line and the quarterbacking situation was there.
Yeah, it was about as bad as it could possibly be at the Power 4 level. I don't think it could have been any worse. Yeah. I really don't. I mean, they beat Cal and Charleston Southern.
And Cal missed 3 field goals.
3 field goals. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. It was the most Cal loss in the history of Cal losses.
Yeah, Cal had a string of those.
If they hadn't had Charleston Southern on the schedule, and everybody's got an FCS out there, so it's not unreasonable. But if FSU didn't have that late season ACC cupcake that a lot of ACC schools and SEC schools have as well, there's a possibility that Cal would have lost to the second 1-11 football team in 3 years because they lost to 1-11 Colorado before Dion got there in 2022. I'm sorry, Bears fans, but I'm not breaking any news to you that it was just the most Cal loss that you could possibly imagine.
Cal probably has, not that I want to stay in the Cal, but, we're college football guys that love to slice up oddities. Cal probably is the biggest disparity of any school in the nation between NFL players produced and quality NFL players produced and the productivity, the winning percentage of the program in the last 50 years.
Yeah, I mean, they've had some really good players, and it just has not been able to come all together. I mean, I remember, Mark, as an Oregon guy, in 2009, the biggest early win of the Chip Kelly era where, the Boise State disaster began his coaching tenure. They stabilized in a thriller against Purdue. The moment where, as an Oregon fan base, we thought, hey, this guy might actually be good after all. Number 6 Cal came to Autzen Stadium and Oregon boat raced them. But think about what I just said in that sentence. Number 6 Cal. They were the number 6 team in the country. This is a program that's produced Aaron Rodgers, Deshaun Jackson, Marshawn Lynch, Jared Goff. And I mean, for the last 8-9 years with Justin Wilcox, it hasn't been a mess. That's why he's still there. It just hasn't been great. They're a program that is so stuck in the mud and has been for a while. I don't know that Wilcox is the coach to pull them out of that because he's been given so much time. But again, they're just stuck in he's too bad to fire, but he's not great. He's never made a conference championship game. And then every now and then he'll go into SEC country and win. And you're like, well, this is awesome. But then he'll go in the same year and lose to 2-10 Florida State. Like, how do you have that big of a range? How do you go to Auburn and win? He's gone to Ole Miss and won before, but you can lose to 2-10 FSU and 1-11 Colorado. That makes no sense to me. Absolutely none.
In terms of name brand, the way you lay it out there, I'm with you. I don't know that those teams were necessarily at that place as the name brand would indicate, meaning that Ole Miss team, that Auburn team, that Florida State team, of course.
Yeah.
And also check out his conference record. It's abysmal.
It's not great.
Not just
it's not, but it's record. Not. I don't think it's horrific. It's just kind of like.
I think it's about a 35% winning percentage. It's bad.
It might be slightly higher than that, but it's not. It's not great. Hold on, I'll pull this up. And by the way,
Wilcox.
Justin Wilcox famously once upon a time offered the Oregon head coaching job and decided that he didn't want to take it for various reasons. But remember, that came about. He was offered the job before Dan Lanning. And I don't think Wilcox is a bad coach. I'm sure he could have gone.
Think he is either. And
I'm sure he could have gone to Oregon and won. I'm just wondering, would Oregon be where they are right now? Probably not. They might be fine. I don't think they'd be where Lanning has them here.
I don't think so either.
So his records in conference play, he is yet to have a season over 500 in conference play.
Yeah.
Across the Pac-12 and the ACC. 2-7, 4-5, 4-5, 1-3 in the COVID year. That one win was over Oregon, by the way. 4-5, 2-7, 4-5, 2-6 in conference play.
What do they have the total there?
The total,
the conference record total.
Oh, yeah, 23-43.
That's about 35%.
That's 35%. Not
range.
Yeah.
It's bad.
Not great. Not
Well, let's stay
great.
with the head coaching position and go to Delanning, because I don't know that we can really criticize anything he's done since he got to Oregon, and he's on the list of the next
Mark,
guy.
I assure you Oregon fans can find things, but go ahead.
Well, I'm going to get there with one in particular, because he's kind of the next guy in line. That's the off-season list of here's the next guy that's going to win a national championship. Between he and Sark is pretty much the
Sark
list.
is who popped into my mind when you just said that.
But the Rose Bowl performance, now that was a tremendous Ohio State team that just got on a roll. No question about that. But it just seemed like a lack of preparation that, to me, looked similar to the year before. We know the blown calls and just the questionable calls. Obviously, if the players would have executed and the plays would have been better against Washington at home, they could have won that game. Obviously, they missed a kick at the gun. It was that close. But then the follow-up to that and playing the conference championship game, and they go down by like 18 points.
20-3. Yeah, they were down 20-3.
Yeah,
came back to take the lead, but they were down 17 points.
Yeah, again, it just seemed like, wow, this team should be better prepared for a big game. They're playing for their playoff lives. And now we see it against Ohio State at the Rose Bowl.
Yeah, a couple of things. First of all, there's a question in the chat that I just wanted to answer real quickly about Tom flipping to USC, and Trojan Fight is saying Oregon media insinuates they will get him back. I know they're going to try. I don't know that they will be successful, but I do know that they will try, Trojan Fight. So anyway, when you look at Oregon's big game performances, yeah, there have been some duds, no doubt about it. There have been some really high-profile letdown games or poorly managed sequences, like no question. And I think that in those spots, winning those big games is the next step for Dan Lanning as a head coach. I don't think we should disregard, Mark, that he's yet to lose to an unranked team, knock on wood. I just watched Kalen DeBoer, who beat Dan Lanning 3 times in a row. I just watched him lose to an unranked. I watch a lot of unranked teams win that, so there is something to winning all the games you should. I also think that this can get slightly overblown with regards to, well, Dan Lanning hasn't won any big games. Well, does the Big Ten championship game not count? Does going to Utah in a college game day matchup, does that also not count? Like, there are arbitrary, and then you have the Ohio State game at Autzen Stadium this year. Those are probably the best wins, big game wins that Dan Lanning has had. There have been some other good ones. Those are probably the most high-profile examples. But, watching the progression of the coaching staff over the last couple of years, I think has been pretty clear. They, in their first year, the worst game, the Washington game was bad. Frankly, the Oregon State game was worse. That was an implosion. Washington was a little unlucky that Bo Nix gets hurt at the end of the game, and then, your defense not able to get a stop in a big moment, a questionable decision, go for it on 4th down. Yeah, you gave that one up. But the Oregon State game, the Beavers completed 6 passes and scored 37 points and overcame a 21-point deficit in just over a quarter. Like, that was worse.
That was the game where they ran the ball like 25 times in a row.
And Oregon just couldn't stop them. And I mean, it was... Yeah, that was really bad. But then you see what has happened since then and realize, okay, that was year 1, and then that was his first time ever being a head coach, and you're gonna take your lumps, and that was about as big of a lump. That was one of the biggest moments in Oregon State football history the last 20 years, easily. So that was a significant lump. But the progression has continued to be there. And, going into last year, I got questions on my show all the time. Well, is Lanning going to win a big game? Lanning hasn't won enough big games. Well, then he beat Ohio State and won the Big Ten championship. Well, he wasn't doing that before. But again, first year had bad late game sequences where they lost to Washington State and they lost to Washington and they lost to Oregon State as well. And the defense wasn't where they wanted it to be. Next year, they got better, got to the conference championship game. Next year, they win a conference championship. And I don't know that progression continues along to well, all of a sudden they're going to be a Final Four team this year because they lose a lot from last year's team that was really talented. But to say that Dan Lanning isn't growing as a head coach is just factually inaccurate. And so I think people want to see him succeed. Of course, Oregon fans do, because the evaluation of Lanning is 3 years long, but for Oregon fans, the evaluation of when you're going to get over the hump and win that national championship has been going on for several decades at this point. But the big game narrative, I think, doesn't hold as much water when you put the Big Ten championship game, but especially Ohio State in there. But the Rose Bowl also shows you, he still needs to get better. He and his staff have to continue to improve. They got out-coached in that game. That was my biggest takeaway. Ohio State, you want to make the case they have a better roster? Sure, go ahead. But I watched those exact same teams play on a football field that year, and Oregon was the better team that day. Ohio State wasn't perfect, but the refs botched a review and gave Ohio State 7 points they should not have had. Oregon was sloppy in a number of other areas, still found a way to win the football game. It was close, and again, Ohio State wasn't perfect, but they came out and they were ready to go for that one, and they were prepared, and they scored early on offense, and they got some stops defensively, and of course, neither of those things happened in the Rose Bowl. So I think the next step is being better in the big games all the time, because you're right. The slow starts on offense and defense, frankly, showed up in the Pac-12 championship game against Washington, showed up against Ohio State in the Rose Bowl. So maybe it's something about being on a neutral site. Maybe that's what, the next step is. But I think the progress has absolutely been there. But to just go out and say, well, he just doesn't win big game, you can't say that anymore. He hasn't won the big game. He hasn't won a national championship. That's the only thing missing from his resume right now. 3 straight double-digit win seasons, a 12-0 regular season for just the second time in Oregon history, and a Big Ten championship. The only thing missing is a national championship.
I'm with you, Spencer. I'm with you. I think he's doing a heck of a job. Before we let you go, I'm going to hit you with a couple quick national notes here.
Okay.
Did you see what Coastal Carolina did with their concessions?
I did. I
love that.
I think it's great. You want to get people for whatever sport into your stadiums. Hey, free concessions, I'm game.
Well, here's the thing I love about it, Spencer, though. I'm on here and I didn't realize it. And then I check the headlines and I see that and I read through it and I have our guy Jackson check the attendance, which I guessed at 20,000 a game. It was 21,400. And they
draw that to a baseball game?
No. So wait a minute.
I thought they did that at the baseball stadium. Are you telling me they're doing this for football?
That was in the SEC football notes that I get every
I
day.
thought it was for their baseball stadium to get more people to go.
Let's clear this up, because I think somebody would have called me on this had I.
I could be wrong. I just came across it on my Twitter feed not long ago and thought, oh, that's a cool idea, and then didn't think about it again until now.
It was also on ESPN's. It was on the front page of their college football page. That's the only reason I read it. It was a story on the college football page, unless they just threw it up there because it was interesting. I'm going to have to research that.
Yeah, hard to not be more incentivized to go if you can walk in and get all the free concessions you want.
Okay, so if I'm correct about the football, what impressed me is that they averaged above the capacity last year. They sold out so it's not an incentive to get more people in the park. If it's a football thing, and again, I don't know why ESPN's college football page would be showing a baseball story. And again, I didn't have anyone correct me in the chat. Regardless, I'll leave you with this. This is what I think we should have free spring football games, like I believe Clemson does.
Yeah, Oregon's is, I believe, I haven't been to an Oregon spring game before, but generally what the Ducks have done, at least in recent years, I think it's always been this way, don't quote me on that, is it's free admission if you bring canned foods, and they make it a food drive event for the community in Eugene to help out food pantries and whatnot. So generally, if you bring some food, I don't know how much exactly has to be brought, but that's typically how they have done it. I think it's great. And look, Mark, I am ardently pro fan, because I think a lot of what happens in sports nowadays is not. Television is a big part of why a lot of things that are anti-fan take place. unfortunately. So anytime there's an opportunity to do something that is good for fans, I'm hard pressed to say no and not say thumbs up, full send, let's do it, because there are just so many things everywhere that you look. There are more commercials on the games that you watch on TV. We have destroyed the Pac-12 for all intents and purposes. I know it's making a relook comeback, but it's not the same as what it once was. And you now have this 12-team playoff, which so a lot of people really like. I don't, but I understand why there are those that do. The difficult part about it is, hey, if you're a top team, and I hope this changes in the next iteration of the playoff, if you're a top team like Oregon that gets the number 1 overall seed because you had the best regular season in all of college football, why do you not get a home playoff game? I mean, Ohio State fans got to see a home playoff game, but then if you wanted to go to the rest of the games, you would have had to go to Pasadena and then to, what was it, the Sugar Bowl was that Atlanta?
Ohio State played Texas in Dallas.
Yeah, sorry, the Cotton Bowl. Yeah, so you'd have to go to Pasadena, you then have to go to Dallas, and then you go to the national championship game, which was in
New Orleans.
Yeah, I think that's right. So I just think that it gets harder and harder to watch your favorite team. And by the way, for a lot of people, regular college football games are not financially accessible. Exactly. It's an expensive world. I'm not going on a political rant, don't worry. But it's an expensive world out there, and it has been that way for quite a while. Like, one of the biggest problems, I think, by polling data amongst my generation is the cost of housing and living. And so when you're worried about that sort of stuff, it's really hard for you to say, yeah, I'm going to spend $200-$300 to go watch my favorite team play college football. And so the spring game is an opportunity to get into the stadium, watch the team, think about it, and all that sort of stuff. I'm a huge proponent of spring games, and I think that the schools that are getting rid of them are doing a disservice to their fans. Even if they're still having an event, that's better than nothing. I think spring games are overall good. I want to see them grow. I think the Deion Sanders, Fran Brown idea is 10 out of 10. No notes. I am so thumbs up. Everybody wins for that. Everybody wins.
We agree on everything for once.
Oh yeah,
on that
first
point,
time.
absolutely, I'm right there with you.
That's how you know this is not producer-generated content on YouTube. Because if we had producers in our ear, they'd be yelling, "One of you disagree with the other person. Start yelling at each other."
I was in a control room way back when I don't remember what the discussion was, but Kirk Herbstreit actually stated on the show, because he was so against the team that he was given. It was something like, who's the best team in college football? And this was like 10 years ago. And he's like, he gave a few points to his team. I think it was Georgia. And then he's like, I don't know. I was just giving Georgia. I don't think they are. Just kind of like threw it out there. He goes, no.
Yeah. No, it's I was guest lecturing in class the other day at Southern Utah and was talking about sports talk and podcasting. And when I got to the television portion, just providing an overview, I was telling the class why I can't watch it. I can't consume it because it's so fake. It's so much of it is fake. Not all of it, but I'm not going to sit here and try and decipher what you actually believe and what you don't actually believe. Skip Bayless does not believe every word that's ever come out of his mouth about LeBron James. He's just BSing to get your attention. But guess what? He's good at it. Good for him. But that's not how I want to consume sports talk, and it's not how I want to be as a host either. Like, I'm going to come on here and tell you what my opinion is. There are plenty of people that do that. That's not unique to me. I don't claim that as the only person to have ever done it. But when you get to the televised level, there are producer-created scripts that result in people giving opinions they do not actually believe, but they have to do it because it's in their contract. So, yeah, I like having creative control.
It's funny, Spencer, that you brought us to this point with that soliloquy there, because just prior to coming on here, I was on the phone with somebody and letting them know that, yeah, every couple times a year, I have to state on here that my opinion's completely authentic. Therefore, it's not always going to be the most exciting take. Sometimes it's very drab and just mundane, because the reality of the situation is that it's very balanced and just very normal. But I'm giving my authentic take, not to intentionally piss off people or intentionally get people to love me. It's just whatever I think.
Yeah. And I mean, no matter, if you make enough opinions, then certainly people will accuse you of being biased or a hater or clickbait and all that sort of stuff. And I like that just comes with the territory. But all you can really do is just know that, you go out there, whoever you are, and you give whatever opinion you have, and you say, hey, this is what I think. This is why I think it might be right, might be wrong. But like, just because I was wrong with an opinion doesn't mean I was trolling, because I guarantee you, every time I give an opinion, I think it's going to be right. It processes in my head and I think this, that, and the other thing, and boom, that's how I arrive at this conclusion. And sometimes you're just wrong. You give enough opinions, sometimes you're just going to be wrong. And that's okay. That's okay. That's why it's fun. Yeah. But, my favorite thing in the world, secretly or not so secretly, I can get really petty in this space. Like I so can. And so when I have a take, if I take a bunch of flack for it, but then I turn out to be right, I can remember comments in my head from like months ago, and I will go back to the video and be like, yo, what's up? Like, it's impossible to not do it. Sometimes you're okay just with the silence, when a certain trend starts happening. Like, I had this last year with Michigan fans. Michigan fans hated me all summer. The ones that found my channel, like, man, you're just hating on Michigan. You're just going to see. And all I was saying was, you're not a 10-win team. You're not going to the Big Ten championship game. You're not going to the playoff. And I was just a hater. All throughout the season, they were very quiet. But you know what? That's okay. I still love them. You're welcome back to my channel anytime. Well, I give it to you. You give it to me. Sometimes it's fun. It's just,
and it's all understandable because I live in that same world where the thing that I hate the most is when people tell me things that I apparently said that I did not say, or they didn't watch the entire video. They read the title.
Oh,
and
that's my
came to a
favorite
conclusion on that.
Yeah.
Or something like that.
Oh, that I love that one. I love that one too, where, the title of your video is a question. People assume what the answer is and then accuse you of having a particular answer. And then you're like, okay, so you didn't watch the video because I asked this question and you assume my answer is one thing. My answer is actually another. And I know that because that's what I said. But have a great rest of your day, bud.
And you, Spencer, have a great rest of your day. We appreciate seeing you here.
Yep. Good to see you, Mark. Peace out, everybody.
See you, Spencer. Spencer Mclaughlin does a great job there. Locked On Ducks and Locked On College Football as well. Easy to find. Spencer Mclaughlin. There you see him. We follow each other on Twitter. And so we do appreciate you all being here at the Voice of College Football. And my work is done for the day. It is still nice and sunny and warm outside. So why not take advantage of that? We will line up some other great guests, I'm sure, for Friday to finish off the week at 4 p.m. Eastern time. Make it on back Friday at 4. Bring a friend or two, or how about 50 with you on Friday, and we'll see you then.